So I'm going to talk about something real quick, and this is to be kind to yourself. I've heard a particular person say this quite a bit. Most of all, be kind to yourself. But what does that really mean, though? Because we hear a lot of love yourself, be kind to yourself. What does that really mean? And the reason why I say what does that really mean? Because what I've learned in just my own experience is that it's not just about taking care of your body. It's not just about maybe doing stuff to keep your head clear every day, to keep a level head, to keep yourself balanced, or whatever you call it. Going to the spa, taking care of what you call it, pampering yourself, treating yourself well. That's good too. But what I learned about some of the biggest ways that many of us, and I've learned this, that we are not kind to ourselves. It's not necessarily what we do to our own bodies. It's what we continue to allow, how some of us, many, I'm going to say many of all ethnicities, and women or men, okay, boy or girl, is how we allow others to treat us. I want to give the biggest example in the world. Is humanity, is humanity, period, being kind to themselves by still tolerating the so-called powers that don't be anymore? The fact that they can still make laws. I realize it's because humanity, period, has lost their power, and I do say humanity because these entities run the entire world. Maybe in certain parts of the world they don't touch, but for the most part they run the world, okay? That's why I don't get into all this getting up and moving around and stuff, because number one, you got to have your passport. Number two, you can't stay in the same place for too long unless you have some kind of work visa. I learned that from going to India. You can't stay more than 3 months just on the tourist visa. After 3 months, you got to leave, go somewhere for a week, and then you got to go to the, somewhere in Sri Lanka, and then you have to get permission to stay longer. It's not that simple just to pick up and go. You have to have a work visa, and then you have to prove that you're constantly working, doing something in order to stay there. It's not that simple. So you definitely have to have a plan. I don't want to get stuck somewhere where you're trying to figure out what you're going to do, and you stuck all the way across the world where you don't really have family or whatever, or anybody you can talk to. It's just unfamiliar. But what I'm saying is the biggest example in the world of not being kind to ourselves is tolerating such a heinous group of entities to run the world. And when I say entities, we think we're looking at human beings, but I've seen some stuff behind the scenes, individuals that don't look like people, okay? I don't even want to say what I saw, because that's just not, let me say it's something that the people the people that run the world, some of these families who have ran the world, even in Hollywood, some of the big heads or whatever, like the biggest, even the people that's unseen. The blood of the rest of humanity goes to particular entities that certainly isn't human. And I've seen it a few times, but I won't say much about that, okay? That's how they keep going. They feeding it. I've seen it. They feeding it. Okay, plenty of people in the world can see that what's going on is a problem, yet and still seems to be a tolerance for this heinous type of stuff when it don't have to be. Now I know consciousness is separating, and the people who it's a separation between low and high. It really ain't that simple. It still takes a lot of work. It really takes a lot of work to get into that higher consciousness where you want to be. I mean, I get that you awake, you starting to learn the truth. You know the truth. You're not fooled easily. I got that, but it's a lot more to it. It's a lot more to it. A lot of people that think they wake up. I'm trying to wake y'all up and such and such and such. Even the ones that's teaching and they know all this stuff about eating healthy or whatever they call it. I'm telling you, it's really more to it. And so that's also a big part of being kind to yourself, because you're kind to the true self and not the false self. Now, another one I was going to talk about that's a little smaller is how we allow people to treat us. It can be, and I say us, I'm just speaking in general. So, you might be a particular person that don't allow nobody to walk all over you, and that's fine. But I'm talking about in general. For the most part, a lot of people think when they're not kind to themselves, it has to do with eating right, and that is a part of it. It has to do with eating right. It has to do with exercise. It has to do with treating yourself every now and then, having fun. That's a part of it. But the biggest part of how people are not kind to themselves is allowing someone to constantly mistreat you, cross you, or just treat you in a manner, whether even if it seems small to others, it might not be small to you, and they constantly get allowed to make you uncomfortable. Even with the smallest thing, they're allowed to constantly make you uncomfortable. You're constantly told to look over it, have thick skin, don't worry about it. But if it's something you don't like, a part of being kind to yourself is you just should not have any tolerance for that behavior. And if you can talk to that person and they don't want to do nothing about it, it's hard to talk to people nowadays. So people will retaliate on you if you have a conversation and say you notice, even if you try to speak to them in a nice manner, people retaliate. So it's not always easy to talk to folks. Sometimes, literally, it has to be spiritual judgment on people, and I don't necessarily mean do work against them to cause them harm. I'm talking about spiritual court, spiritual judgment, spiritual justice. I'm talking about that kind of stuff, not just doing some work to cause somebody harm and misfortune because you got mad or something like that. I don't necessarily mean it like that. But I do recommend spiritual work for true justice, and let true spirit decide how justice should be taken. If you feel like it's not going to be done with the physical, when you go to people, they seem to not care, and then it's time to move past people and go to the spiritual court, because people ain't shit. Okay? And I've had to do that. I had to go to spiritual court. Literally, I talked to somebody who does some readings and stuff, and I just speak to her. And I spoke to her about a situation, and she said, yeah, she see the spiritual police coming in and getting these folks. See, it has to go spiritual because people ain't crap. Because the stuff that these folks are doing, people have been aware of for years and have done nothing to them. People ain't shit. You can't go to people these days. The justice, I'm not going to say the justice system, but according to my situation, this person's got away with what they do for so long. Nobody cares. Nobody's going to move them. You got to go to the spiritual court. And now it's a lot of people that might be losing. When it should have just been one person moved out the way, now it's going to be a lot of people moved out the way, because that's how the spirit is going to work. Now that's being kind to yourself. But like say just in any situation, like a family member. Oh, so many people talk about their mothers. It's not even funny. If you got a mother that's always criticizing you, talking down to you. And this is just an example of how I just hear so many people, and fathers too, but especially in the brown community, you hear, it's not just the brown community, because even in the white community, I've heard about, especially men complaining about their mothers. Really sometimes about probably as much, if not more, than brown men do. For some reason, it seems like the world just knows the brown male complaining about his brown mother, but get in some white communities, while you'll hear what white men have to say, But not to say that everything they say is right. I'm just saying. So, somebody making you uncomfortable, and literally, like, if they're always seem like they're judging you. Now, I had this coming up too. They seem like they're always judging everything you do. Everything, you can't do nothing right. They always judging you, always judging you. And it's hard when this is a parental figure that does this ever since you're a child. Because when you grow up constantly trying to, you constantly being hard on yourself. Nothing you ever do in your eyes is going to be good enough. You're going to be your own worst critic. Because you grew up with a parental figure that always judge you. And that's just one example. And so, when you want to tell them how they treated you, they want you to suck it up. Well, that's not being kind to yourself. They need to know they hurt you. No, you don't need tough skin. Why do you always need tough skin? They need to stop what the fuck they're doing. Why do you always need tough skin? To allow them to continue to be abusive? No, I get that you don't let everything get to you. But at the same time, one person told me, you got to teach people how to treat you. That's also one wise woman told me, you got to teach people. And all she did was mispronounce my name because I have a long name. And all she did was mispronounce my name. And she said, what's your name? And I told her. And I said, but that's all right. I just gave it a short form of my name because I don't like to give my whole name if people don't know how to say it right. Just say 3 letters. She said, you got to teach people how to treat you. And that's true. It ain't about being all sensitive. Motherfuckers need to know how to treat you, and telling people and putting your foot down is part of being kind to yourself. It's not being overly sensitive. It's not being all, it's not being over, what'd you say? You overreacting. See, somebody else wants to tell you how to take care of yourself. If I say I don't want to be treated this way, this doing this caused me to do this. Like I had a family member, I asked them time and time again not to call me a particular nickname because that particular nickname have some serious negative energy connected to it. And I have to get rid of that nickname that's been connected to me since I was a little girl because that entity tried to take over my entire identity. And I had a problem with identity growing up. But for some reason, they couldn't figure out how to call me and I realized they were so used to calling me by my nickname, but I couldn't keep saying it, so I don't talk to them any longer. I'm sorry, but if I'm saying this entity is negative and I'm trying to pull it away, and it's not going to help talking to people that keep calling me this entity's name when I'm trying to get it away from me. I just had to cut. I haven't talked to them since. You can't do that. If they can't take me seriously, I'm not going to put myself in any more spiritual danger because this is some spiritual shit going on with the entity. I can't help it if they don't take me seriously. That's their problem. But that's part of being kind to yourself. I have not talked to them since. If you cannot take me seriously, I don't care what you believe in. I don't care. If you tell me that you don't want me bringing orange juice to your house because you think orange juice is bad luck, and I know it's just a silly example, but I'm saying it's just an example. If you don't want me bringing orange juice to your house because you think it's bad luck, I'm not going to bring it saying, oh, she being silly or he being silly. Let me bring this orange juice. Stop being silly. Why you feel that way? Fuck, don't nobody need to tell you that shit. Respect them. Respect them. Don't tell them how they should feel about anything, no matter how small it is. And so that's it. That's all I got to say. It's a big lesson I'm learning, regardless of whatever the consequences is, because I don't realize, especially heavily over the weekend, is that I need to get into a spiritual system. This shit is not working, and it's going anyway. It's passing away anyway, because it's about to be a reset, and I don't know what's going to happen. That's why you got to kind of raise the consciousness above the illusion. But anyway, it needs to be a spiritual system because this stuff right now, this ain't working out. It's not working out, yeah, so I decided that heavily over the weekend, like, it got to be a spiritual system. We have to be under a spiritual system because all this stuff about you need proof and how do you know, and you keep telling somebody, if somebody mistreating you, maybe somebody discriminated against you at the job, maybe somebody is doing sexual harassment or whatever at the job, or, just mistreating you because you're a female or whatever the case may be, or whatever else going on, because some men at a job get sexually harassed by other men. That's going on quite heavily. Okay? So whatever the case may be. And then you try to tell somebody, you talk over again, and nobody seems to do anything about it. You keep needing all this proof. It's your word against theirs. They're going to say they didn't do anything. Fuck that shit. Your word against theirs. They know they're guilty, but they get to lie, and they get to sound good because they charismatic, and they know how to get the minds, or grab the minds of everybody because they the king or the master of illusions, that they get to grab the minds of everybody. But the person that's really telling the truth might not have the gift of gab like the liar. And so the person that's telling the truth, ain't nobody gonna listen to. Fuck that shit. It needs to be a spiritual system, because the spirit don't give a fuck how charismatic you are. Because these people need to stop getting away with it, and the belief that there is just no other way of being besides what you see, and what some people see as what's going on in the world. Because I don't always pay attention to it. That's almost like not really being kind to yourself, because now you're not getting connected to the true self, thinking that this is all there is. And that's whatever people see that's and they, with that tunnel vision, they think that that's just all it is. Okay. So anyway, yeah, that's it. That's a big part of being kind to yourself, is that it's far beyond just taking care of your body and stuff. It's really a huge part is you really gotta stitch it, and you do have to set boundaries. Some people, I heard somebody say something about boundaries. I get that, but at the same time, sometimes you have to set your limitations. You can't just let people dump whatever they want to on you. You're not a trash can for everybody to throw their trash in. So yes, sometimes you have to say, no, I can't do this. No, I can't do this. I can't tolerate this. Sometimes you have to say that, because you need to know your limit. You need to know that you cannot be the person that takes on everybody's burdens. You're not the doggone sacrifice. You cannot be the freaking sacrifice. And being a sacrifice for somebody else because you don't want to make them uncomfortable by saying you don't like the way they're treating you or whatever's going on. And so you don't want to make them uncomfortable, but they constantly make you uncomfortable. And then that is not being kind to yourself. That is a big part of self-hatred. And I'm saying this to myself too. Okay, but I believe heavily in spiritual system too. I done got on the spiritual side, and you got to work on yourself for that too. You know, I can't be in my ego getting into the spiritual system. I got to work heavily on myself. Okay, because it's time to switch to a spiritual system. This other shit ain't working. Okay, but anyway, that's it. Now I'll talk later.